The hulking silhouette of a tiger tank emerges through the misty dawn of April 12, 1944. Somewhere in the muddy fields outside Normandy, France, Lieutenant James Harrington squints through his binoculars from a concealed position, his breath forming small clouds in the cold morning air. The distinctive grinding of German steel pierces the silence, sending shivers down his spine. He's been hunting these mechanical beasts for months. Tiger at 2 o'clock, 800 yards, he whispers to Sergeant Miller, whose fingers grip his radio so tightly his knuckles turn white. Tell command we've found our target. The tank's massive 88mm cannon swivels menacingly, searching for threats. Inside its armored shell, Oberleutnant Klaus Werner wrestles with his conscience as much as with the tank's stubborn controls. An engineer by training, he had identified critical flaws in the Tiger's transmission months ago. His modifications, implemented last week across the Western Front's Tiger battalions, were meant to make the fearsome machines truly invincible. A deafening metallic screech suddenly erupts from the Tiger. The massive vehicle shudders to a stop, black smoke pouring from its engine compartment. Curses in German echo across the field. What the hell? Miller whispers. Harrington lowers his binoculars, a grim smile forming on his weathered face. It seems our German friends are having some technical difficulties. Little did Klaus know that his perfect engineering solution would become the Allies' most unexpected weapon, turning the Third Reich's mechanical pride into its greatest vulnerability. 6 months earlier, Munich, Germany, November 1943. Klaus Werner hunches over his drafting table in a poorly lit basement office at the Henschel tank manufacturing facility. Engineering diagrams of the Tiger tank's transmission system cover every available surface. Dark circles under his eyes betray weeks of sleepless nights. You're still here? Heinrich Müller, the facility's senior engineer, appears at the doorway, his voice a mixture of concern and admiration. Klaus doesn't look up. The transmission failures are increasing, Heinrich. 3 more Tigers immobilized last week in Russia. We're losing more tanks to mechanical failures than to enemy fire. Flashback. Klaus as a young engineering student in 1939, bright-eyed and idealistic, standing beside his father. Engineering isn't about building weapons, son, his father had said. It's about solving problems that help people. The memory haunts Klaus now, as does the knowledge that his father died in an Allied bombing raid just months after opposing Hitler publicly. The Tiger tank had been Germany's answer to the overwhelming numerical superiority of Allied armor. Its thick armor and powerful cannon made it nearly invulnerable in battle, but its complex engineering made it unreliable in the field. Klaus believed he could fix this fatal flaw. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Lieutenant James Harrington walks through the halls of the Pentagon. A former automotive engineer at General Motors, Harrington had been recruited for a special intelligence unit focused on German tank technology. His intimate knowledge of transmissions made him uniquely qualified to understand the Tiger's weaknesses. The Tiger is a mechanical marvel, but fundamentally flawed, Harrington explains to a room full of officers. Its transmission system cannot handle the tank's weight, especially in difficult terrain. But what if we could somehow make that weakness worse? In the snowy forests of the Ardennes, young Private Thomas Jenkins shivers in his foxhole. Just yesterday, his unit watched helplessly as a single Tiger tank destroyed 3 American Shermans. It was like shooting at a mountain with a pea shooter, he writes in a letter home. How are we supposed to win against these monsters? He doesn't mail the letter, tucking it instead into his breast pocket, where it will remain when his body is discovered a month later. Back in Germany, Klaus' relationship with Elsa, a secretary at the facility with secret ties to the German resistance, complicates his work. Every improvement you make keeps this terrible war going longer, she whispers during a rare private moment. Her words cut deeper than she knows. That night, studying captured British intelligence reports that Elsa secretly provided, Klaus makes a devastating discovery. The Allies are developing specialized ammunition specifically designed to penetrate Tiger armor. His work on the transmission suddenly seems even more crucial. You have 3 weeks to implement your solution, General Stryker informs Klaus during an inspection. The Führer himself is demanding more reliable Tigers for the coming offensive. As Klaus works feverishly on his redesign, Harrington's team in London intercepts partial information about German transmission modifications. They're trying to fix their Achilles heel, Harrington realizes. We need to know exactly what they're changing. The stage is set for a battle of engineering wits that will impact thousands of lives. Klaus, wrestling with his conscience but determined to protect German soldiers, believes his transmission fix will save lives. Harrington, equally determined, seeks to transform that solution into catastrophe. Hey everyone! I'd love to know where you're watching this video from. Drop your location in the comments below and let's see how global our tank enthusiast community really is. December 1943. Snow falls silently outside the Henschel factory as Klaus presents his redesigned transmission system to a roomful of German officers and engineers. The problem was never the basic design, Klaus explains, pointing to his detailed diagrams. It was the material composition of the drive gears. By increasing the chromium content and implementing a new heat treatment process, we can create a transmission that withstands the Tiger's extreme torque without sacrificing performance. General Stryker nods approvingly. When can this be implemented? Production begins immediately. Field installations by February, Klaus responds confidently. What Klaus doesn't reveal is his private doubt. His solution looks perfect on paper, but rush testing has shown inconsistent results. The increased chromium makes the gears stronger but potentially more brittle under certain conditions. He's gambling that these conditions won't arise in combat. Across the channel, Lieutenant Harrington sits in a nondescript London office with Major William Crawford of British intelligence and French resistance operative Marguerite Dubois. Our source inside Henschel confirms they're modifying the transmission, Dubois reports, sliding a microfilm across the table. These are partial specifications, smuggled out at great risk. Harrington studies the documents, his expression darkening. They're changing the metallurgical composition, increasing chromium content. He falls silent, calculations running through his mind. This could actually work, unless... Unless what? Crawford leans forward. Chromium improves hardness but increases brittleness under sustained cold-to-hot temperature fluctuations. If they're rushing this into production... Harrington's eyes widen. We need to get this information to our tank battalions immediately. I think the Germans just handed us an unexpected advantage. Meanwhile, Klaus finds himself increasingly isolated. His relationship with Elsa has grown strained after security officers questioned her about missing documents. His colleague Dr. Müller, once supportive, now watches him with suspicious eyes. The security office has concerns about your design, Müller confides during a late-night conversation. They wonder why you insisted on chromium when tungsten alloys were also available. Tungsten is needed for ammunition production. Klaus responds defensively. I'm being practical. Some might call it sabotage, Müller says quietly, not meeting Klaus's eyes. The accusation hangs in the air between them. That night, Klaus discovers his office has been searched. Designs moved, drawers left slightly open. The walls are closing in. In February 1944, the first Tigers with Klaus's modified transmission roll out to the Western Front. Initial reports are promising. The tanks perform admirably in controlled conditions. Klaus receives a commendation from Berlin. His status as a potential saboteur fades, replaced by recognition as the engineer who perfected the Tiger. But Harrington's intelligence network is at work. Through the resistance, specific instructions reach Allied forces. Engage Tigers at maximum range. Force them to maneuver continuously between hot operation and cold idle. Their transmissions will fail catastrophically after 5 to 7 cycles. The first evidence comes from Italy. A Tiger battalion loses 6 tanks in a single engagement, none to enemy fire, all to transmission failures. Klaus is summoned to explain. Environmental factors we couldn't have anticipated, he argues. The extreme temperature variations in mountain operations, fix it, General Stryker interrupts. Or face the consequences of failure. The dramatic turning point comes when Elsa is arrested by the Gestapo. During interrogation, she reveals Klaus's access to captured Allied documents. Hours later, Klaus is working late when Muller appears, ashen-faced. "They've taken Elsa. You're next," he whispers. "I've arranged transport. You must leave tonight." "I can't," Klaus replies. "My work isn't finished. And if I run, they'll know I'm guilty." Guilty of what, Klaus? Trying to end this madness? The war is lost. Your perfect solution is failing everywhere. Tigers are breaking down faster than ever. The devastating truth crashes down on Klaus. His attempt to create a reliable transmission has backfired catastrophically. Whether by subconscious sabotage or genuine engineering failure, he has accomplished exactly what Harrington hoped for, accelerating the Tiger's demise. That night, Klaus makes his choice. He begins systematically destroying his research, but leaves behind one critical document, a complete analysis of the transmission's fatal flaw and how Allied forces could exploit it. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying this deep dive into WW2 tank engineering, please hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support makes videos like this possible. April 16, 1944, the Normandy countryside trembles under the weight of an entire Tiger tank company, 12 mechanical behemoths advancing toward Allied positions near Cannes. Leading the formation, Hauptmann Dieter Lehmann stands confidently in his commander's cupola, surveying the rolling fields ahead. His Tigers have been newly fitted with Werner's improved transmission system, and he's been assured they can now operate continuously for 200 kilometers without failure. 5 miles away, Lieutenant Harrington crouches behind a hedgerow with Captain Reynolds of the 2nd Armored Division. Remember, Harrington emphasizes, don't engage them directly. Execute the sequence exactly as briefed. Reynolds looks skeptical. My men are going to die while we play this cat-and-mouse game. Trust me, Harrington says, in 30 minutes, those Tigers will defeat themselves. The battle begins with a thunderous artillery barrage that lands harmlessly behind the German tanks. The Tigers respond, their 88mm guns tearing through the countryside, but hitting nothing. Allied Sherman tanks appear briefly on the horizon, fire ineffectively, then retreat behind hills. Inside the lead Tiger, Lehmann grows suspicious. They're baiting us. All units, maintain formation and proceed with caution. For 20 agonizing minutes, the dance continues. The Tigers advance, then idle when Allied forces disappear. They accelerate to full speed when targets present themselves, engines heating to maximum operating temperature, then cool rapidly during the lulls. Exactly as Harrington predicted. The first failure comes from the rear of the formation. A Tiger suddenly grinds to a halt, black smoke pouring from its engine compartment. Over the radio, its commander reports. Transmission seized completely. Unable to move. Lehmann orders the unit to continue, leaving the disabled tank behind. Minutes later, another Tiger stops, its drive gears shattered. Then another. What's happening? Lehmann demands, pounding his fist on the radio. Engineering assured us these problems were fixed. In his own tank, the temperature gauge climbs dangerously as they charge up a muddy incline in pursuit of a retreating Sherman. At the top, Lehmann orders a momentary halt to scan the valley below. That's when he hears it, a high-pitched whine from the transmission, followed by a terrible grinding noise. His driver looks back in horror. We've lost forward gears, Herr Hauptmann. Use reverse. Get us back into cover. Lehmann orders. The tank shudders, moves backward 10 meters, then stops with a catastrophic clang. The transmission has failed completely. One by one, the remaining Tigers suffer the same fate. Within an hour, the entire company is immobilized across the Norman countryside. As German crews desperately work to repair their vehicles, Allied aircraft appear overhead. The Tigers, once the most feared weapons on the battlefield, have become stationary targets. Harrington watches through binoculars as German crew members abandon their vehicles, fleeing on foot across open fields. He should feel triumph, but instead feels a complicated mix of pride and sorrow. These men aren't so different from his own brother, who died at Kasserine Pass. How did you know? Reynolds asks beside him. Harrington lowers his binoculars. Their engineer made a critical error. The increased chromium content in the transmission gears makes them stronger but brittle under thermal cycling. Each time the tanks heat up then cool down, microscopic stress fractures form. Eventually, catastrophic failure is inevitable. So the solution actually made the problem worse? Much worse, Harrington confirms. And the irony is, I suspect their engineer might have known it would happen. Meanwhile, in a farmhouse 5 kilometers away, Klaus Werner listens to the distant sounds of battle. Having escaped Germany with Müller's help, he's been working with the French resistance for 2 months. The knowledge that his solution is now destroying the very tanks he helped build weighs heavily on him. Was this your intention all along? Asks Marguerite Dubois, watching him carefully. Klaus stares out the window. I wanted to build something perfect, he says finally. Instead, I created the perfect flaw. As night falls, burning tigers illuminate the horizon like funeral pyres for Germany's fading military ambitions. The battle for Normandy hasn't even officially begun, but already the myth of the invincible Tiger tank has been shattered, not by superior Allied firepower, but by an engineering improvement that proved to be its undoing. September 1944, a light rain falls on the Allied headquarters near Paris. Lieutenant Harrington, now Major Harrington after the success of Operation Tiger Trap, studies a map showing German armor deployments across the Western Front. Red pins mark confirmed destroyed Tigers, dozens of them clustered around major battle sites. Over 70% of Tiger losses in the past 3 months have been due to mechanical failure rather than combat damage, he explains to General Patton, who studies the map with intense interest. The Germans are trying to fix the transmission issues, but they're working with limited materials and outdated information. And our friend Werner? Patton asks, referring to the German engineer who has become something of a legend among Allied intelligence. Safe in London, providing invaluable assistance on other German technical developments. The consequences of the Tiger's vulnerability have rippled throughout the German military machine. Production schedules have been thrown into chaos as factories scramble to modify existing transmission designs. Precious chromium and steel alloys are being wasted on flawed components. Tank crews, once proud to serve in Tiger battalions, now request transfers to other units. In a London debriefing room, Klaus Werner sits across from British intelligence officers, his face gaunt from months of stress and insufficient sleep. On the table between them lies his original transmission design. Was it deliberate sabotage? Asks Commander Wilson pointedly. Klaus stares at the technical drawings. Would you believe me if I said I don't know? He runs a hand through his prematurely graying hair. I was trying to solve the problem, truly. But perhaps, subconsciously. He falls silent, remembering his father's words about engineering being meant to help people, not destroy them. Had some part of him designed a solution destined to fail? Meanwhile, on the front lines, Private Daniel Cooper helps recover a disabled Tiger near the Belgian border. The massive tank sits abandoned, its crew long gone, transmission destroyed by its own fatal flaw. Can't believe they just left it, his sergeant remarks, inspecting the tank's interior. Cooper runs his hand along the Tiger's thick armor plate, impervious to most Allied weapons. All this protection, and it was defeated by gears smaller than dinner plates. In a military hospital in England, Sergeant Miller, who had been with Harrington during the initial Tiger sighting, recovers from wounds sustained during the Normandy campaign. He reads a letter from Harrington explaining the full story of Klaus Werner and the transmission sabotage. The Tiger was the perfect metaphor for Nazi Germany, Harrington writes. Outwardly powerful, inwardly flawed, and ultimately defeated by its own contradictions. Back in Germany, Dr. Heinrich Müller faces a military tribunal for his role in helping Klaus escape. Despite the Gestapo's brutal interrogation, he refuses to reveal Klaus's whereabouts. Werner was our finest engineer, he tells his accusers. You drove him away with your suspicions and threats. His departure is your failure, not his betrayal. For this defiance, Müller is sentenced to work in a labor camp, repairing damaged tanks returned from the front, many of them Tigers with failed transmissions. By December 1944, the German High Command issues a new directive, Tigers are to be used as stationary defensive positions rather than mobile assault vehicles whenever possible. The official reason cites strategic considerations, but the real purpose is to minimize transmission failures. In London, Klaus is reunited with Elsa, who was freed in a prisoner exchange after the Normandy invasion. Their reunion is bittersweet, filled with memories of colleagues and friends lost to the war. "Did I do the right thing?" Klaus asks her one evening, the weight of thousands of lives affected by his design still heavy on his conscience. "You did what you could in an impossible situation," she replies. The real question is, what will you build when this war is over? By early 1945, Allied forces are pushing into Germany itself. The myth of German technical superiority lies as broken as the Tigers scattered across Europe. Harrington, now part of a technical intelligence team following behind the advancing armies, inspects captured German manufacturing facilities. At the Henschel plant where Klaus once worked, Harrington finds mountains of production documents and test reports. Reading through Klaus's original notes, he discovers something surprising. Klaus had identified the thermal cycling problem from the beginning but had been ordered to implement his solution before adequate testing. He knew, Harrington realizes. He must have known what would happen. In April 1945, as the European war nears its end, Harrington arranges a meeting with Klaus in a small cafe in liberated Paris. The two engineers, once opponents in a battle of technical wits, sit across from each other, united now by their shared understanding of how machines, like empires, can contain the seeds of their own destruction. Was it intentional? Harrington finally asks the question directly. Klaus looks out at the Parisians enjoying their first spring of freedom. "Engineering is never just about machines," he says after a long silence. "It's about the people who use them and the purposes they serve." He turns back to Harrington. The flaw was in the system that created the Tiger, not just in its transmission. As Germany surrenders in May 1945, a final tally shows that more Tigers were lost to mechanical failures than to enemy action, a testament to how an engineering improvement became one of the Allies' most effective weapons of the war. As the dust of war settled across Europe, the legacy of the Tiger tank and its fatal flaw became a footnote in military engineering textbooks. Yet for those who understood the full story, it remained a powerful reminder of how wars are won and lost not just on battlefields, but in workshops and drafting rooms. Klaus Werner eventually immigrated to America in 1948, where he joined the emerging automotive industry in Detroit. His innovations in transmission design, if properly tested this time, would influence civilian vehicles for decades. He never spoke publicly about his wartime work, but every year on April 16th, the anniversary of the Normandy Tiger trap, he would visit a small memorial he created in his garden for the men on both sides who had been caught in the machinery of war. James Harrington returned to General Motors after the war, bringing with him hard-won knowledge about how mechanical systems fail under stress. His post-war designs emphasized reliability over complexity, a philosophy he traced directly to his experiences with the Tiger tank. Perhaps the most profound legacy was not technological but human. Both men carried the weight of their wartime decisions throughout their lives, each finding redemption not in forgetting the past, but in building a better future. The story of the Tiger's transmission, of fatal flaws hidden within apparent strength, reminds us that technical prowess alone cannot overcome fundamental weaknesses, whether in machines or in ideologies. Sometimes, the most invincible seeming forces contain within themselves the very seeds of their own defeat. If you've enjoyed this exploration of how engineering decisions changed the course of World War II, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more untold stories from history's greatest conflicts. Leave a comment below with other mechanical failures or engineering disasters from military history you'd like us to cover in future videos. Until next time, remember that history's greatest lessons often come from its most overlooked details.